Time to talk animation layers, a super handy workflow that I see a lot of games animators use, but I often see feature film animators really not use all that much. I'm not sure why, so let's check it out. So here I am in shot 55. This is the one where he, Beta rips down this door, goes and runs, and we get this awesome little slow motion moment. Now, we're going to talk about two uses of animation layers in this video. One is for characters and one is for cameras, and that's where we're starting right now. This animation actually has camera shake. It has a bunch of great camera animation that we can dive a little bit deeper into. Inside of shot 55, down towards the bottom, we have the camera itself, but we also have the camera rig. So if I leave the camera view, I'll come over here, and I'll show you what's going on. So here is our camera, right there, camera actor, and we also have the camera rig skeletal mesh, which is sort of its own asset to be able to control the camera. Now the camera rig itself, if we twirl this down, has a space for animation sequences, which we don't actually have anything on. And then we have the camera control rig, which is the controls, right? These little actual grabbable things. And if I twirl that down, you'll see that we have three different layers inside of our sequencer. The base animation layer, the cam shake layer A, and the cam shake layer B. You're also going to see these three things up here in the animation layers panel, which if you don't see this, by the way, I can close this and I can reopen it with this little layers button. If I'm in animation mode, I'll see this little, collection of buttons. Hitting layers pops this open. So the base layer and the camera layer A and B, these are referring to these instead of this character, camera rig, control rig thing. So if I go to the base layer and go ahead and go into my curve editor, you can see that the base layer has some animation data, and this is basically the camera motion. Just doing its thing. Then we have the shake layer A, which has a bunch of shake data, and then cam layer B only has data when the character starts running, and this is kind of a handheld motion. That happens right around here. But you'll notice something really interesting, and the best way to look at this is if I want to sort of isolate and see what's, which parts of this are doing what, I can take these different animation layers and I can mute them. I can say, all right, let's turn off camera layer shake A, boop, and B, boop. And let's just jump into the camera right here. And let's take a look at the base animation layer. So camera rig base animation looks like this. We have just smooth camera motion, camera tracks backwards, and he does his thing. Camera's nice and smooth, looks great. But let's now amp it up a bit. If I unmute camera shake layer A, unmute that, you can see right there when I unclick it, we have a little bit of change. And what this is going to do is it's going to add just a little bit of noise, a little bit of motion on top of our camera motion, right? So that extra layer of data, that was this additional animation. And so that's playing on top. Now, if I wanted to look at each one, I could keep unmuting them. You get the idea. But the thing you'll notice is we actually don't have any camera shake during this slow-mo motion. Nothing. The reason for that is because each of these layers actually has a weight slider. And if you look closely up here on the top, during the slow-mo motion, these numbers here, this 0.4 weight, goes to 0, right? So the animation within these layers actually gets disabled during the slow-mo motion, or part of the shot. And so if I go to my sequencer and I select, actually I'll do this, I'll select my camera control rig, go to my sequencer, and you can see we have the cam shake layer B, cam shake layer A, the weight, and the weight. I can switch the view mode to stacked, so you can see both of these. And here you'll see we have two curves. The keyframes here on the weight is basically the 0.4 value we see up here. And when we go to the slow motion, both of these get set down to 0. And that's what's turning off the use of those layers in this part of the animation. Really, really handy way to work because it allows you to have, easy ways to adjust the note. If someone says, hey, the camera shake feels weird, can you adjust it? You don't have all of your animation of the regular camera motion and the shake all happening at the same time. You have them separated out so you can easily modify just those assets or just those attributes of your camera one thing at a time. The other thing that's really nice about this is because of the layers, you can say, you know what? I want more camera shake, and I don't even need to change the actual animation data. I can just go back to the weight of that animation data and say, you know what? I want to dial this up. I want the weight of the animation instead of being 40% or 0.4, dial that up to 100%. Let's say, give me all of the animation for that particular layer. So now when I hit play, I'm gonna have a much more aggressive camera shake. More. I can dial this up beyond 1. I can say, give me a weight of 4. And you can see already the camera's going crazy. Now we have a really intense camera shake animation. And so you can basically add a multiplier on top of whatever that data is. And so this is a really good example of how layers can be used. In the case of a camera, it gives you a way to break up different parts of your camera animation and also control when you're using those different parts, things like shake. But you can do this with anything. It doesn't have to just be cameras. So what I'll do is I'm actually going to leave this sequencer, just exit altogether, and I'm going to navigate over to shot 70, which is right here. So here's at a shot 70. We've got some robots hanging out, getting crushed, and overall not having a great time. But what we can do now is we can actually add some animation with the character rigs into layers so we can maybe make some adjustments in a very non-destructive workflow. So I'm going to adjust my baked animation. I'm going to turn off the baked animation, and I'm going to re-enable the control rigs because I want to work with the actual control rigs and live keyframe data in this shot. So here I am in my sequence anim work. Here we go. And I think this is robot number 1 if I select him. Yeah, robot 1. There we go. So here's what we'll do. I'm going to make sure I select my robot control rig, and that'll ensure that I'm in my animation mode. You can see that there are already a bunch of animation layers present from the original workflow, but I'm not going to worry about any of that just yet. I'm going to once again add my own way to get in and out of the camera really easily. I'm going to add a camera cut track, and that will let me exit and re-enter the camera right there. Here's my characters over here. And I'm going to let this thing go whoosh and crush those guys. Now, there's a lot going on, so make sure you hit G if you need to get rid of some of this stuff that's visually in the way. But maybe what I want to have happen is this robot, he does not get crushed. He turns to the side, and then he turns back, and he points his gun forward, and then eventually, or not eventually, very shortly after, boop, there he goes. Now, what I'm going to do is maybe I want to have him, come up, look to the side, and I want to keep him looking off to the side. I don't want him to turn back this direction. So what I will do is maybe let's just say, I'm going to grab his head and maybe this top part of his torso, these two controls here. And I'm going to add a layer where I'm going to make a change to just those poses. So what I'll do is I'll select those two controls. I'll say new layer, boop, and that will put the head and that particular control on his chest into their own layer where that's all that's there. And I'll call this Robo Turn. Sure. Now, if I look a little bit closer down in my sequencer, just to show you how this is broken down now, I can collapse all these different layers and you'll see a few things. We have our robot 1 who has a control rig, which is, on the character. He's got base animation. He's got an additional layer here for keep alive. And then we have my new Robo Turn layer. And inside the Robo Turn layer, just the head and that chest control. Those are the only two things that are in there. So those are the only two things that I can key in that layer. Now, if I want to be really careful, I can also maybe lock these other layers, like the base layer or whatever. If I don't want to adjust the existing animation, that might be a good idea. But in this case, I'm feeling confident. I'm feeling reckless. Let's not worry about it. I'm going to go ahead and just set a key. So maybe right here, he turns over here. Hit S. I'll hit S. I'll set a key on these two things. And he goes over here, he turns. Nope. You're not going to turn. You're coming back this way. Maybe I'm going to have his torso turned over here, and I'll keep his head even more turned that way. Maybe I'll even change the angle a little bit. So there, now what I've done is, he comes up, does his thing. It looks a little bit weird, right? He has kind of this jerky motion to it, and that's because I'm counter animating something in the base layer. I'm not doing a very good job of it. But my point remains that now I've added some animation that keeps him doing his thing. And maybe what I could do is just retime this a little bit, just move some of these keyframes I'm messing with. Boop. That way it's not quite as aggressive. I don't know. It's not great. It's fine. It works okay. I'm just, I'm counter animating here, so it's not going to look awesome. But either way, I'll go ahead and just hit S on my head control and my, the end control. Boop, key those. And now I've made a change. Now, it feels like his gun is getting jerked forward away from him. If I go ahead and turn all this off, it feels like he goes, whoop, and he gets pulled. Because now it feels like the body motions are feeling very separate. So let's go ahead and add that to my layer. And you know what? Maybe I want to take his, I think it's going to be his FK, or what do you call it? His IK wrist. The IK wrist is my guess as to what's actually driving the gun. That's how I would animate it. This hand right here is the thing in charge. So I'm going to go ahead and just say, you know what? I want to add animation to that hand. So I'm going to click that control, right click on Robo Turn, add selected. And that will now add that IK control into the layer, allowing me to animate it within that layer. So if I go look at my Robo Turn, I now have the end control, the head control, and the right arm IK. I'm going to go ahead and just set a key here, hold it in place. And now when I get to this frame, let's see how this works. Let me go ahead and just find a frame or a position where you can see this a little bit better. And now you can see I can move this hand. Sure enough, the constraint is still active. That's awesome. And I'll go ahead and just rotate. And that's looking a little bit better. And maybe what I'll do is I'll have him move his entire arm this way. So he holds it out sideways, right? So now that's what I have happening. You know, he ducks down, he comes up, and he turns his whole body, including his gun, sideways. He looks a little ridiculous, but he gets hit. Doesn't look great, but you can see what my layer is doing, right? So all that turning and those changes now exist here inside the Robo Turn layer. Now I can easily just say, you know what, let's look at what I had before this and see if I actually even like this. In fact, I'm actually just gonna make one little tweak here. Maybe I'll go like this and change the angle, just so it doesn't break his arm quite so much. There we go. So there we go, he lifts his arm, pulls his gun, does his thing. Let's turn this off. I can just take this layer and mute it. Boop. Boop, right? Before and after. So here's what happened before. Lifts up, goes back to his thing, gets crushed. Here, turn my layer back on, comes up, goes to the side, gets crushed. And so this is what layers can do, is it allows you to take specific parts of your character rig, put it in its own little section, and animate it with clean curves so that you can just animate on top of what's already there. And what's also cool is if I say, you know what, I like what I've done here, but I don't want them turning all the way over to the side. Maybe I only want like half of that change. I can actually take this and say, you know what, give me 50%, 0.5 weight. Now he'll allow himself to turn partially, right? So he can turn kind of at an angle. So he comes like this, he turns partially at an angle, as opposed to the original animation, straightforward. Now he's at part of an angle, he's at an angle, and boom. And that doesn't look too bad, right? It almost looks like he just kind of aims down his sights at an angle. Pretty happy with that, actually. So that's a really good example. Now, one last little tip I'm going to give you here is if I select, say, the head control. That's one of the controls I was using, right? If I select the head control, I can look over here at my animation layers and you'll notice something. If I select this, once again, I have a little blue dot on the base layer, the keep alive layer, and the Robo Turn layer. And that is basically telling me, hey, that selected control exists in whatever's lit up here. So I can actually see that my head, my head control, I might need to edit the animation in one of 3 different layers, depending on what it is I'm looking to change. It's not in the gamma offset or these other animation layers here, but it's basically just letting me know, hey, you have this control in a few different places. If you're trying to look for some of your animation, heads up, that's where you might find it. So that can be just really good to keep in mind. So for example, you're like, I don't think I have this hand anywhere. I select it. Turns out the hand animation is also in those 3 layers. But if I select maybe a shoulder control, boop, it's in the base layer and the keep alive layer, but it's not in the Robo Turn layer. So if I'm trying to key it and set, Robo Turn keyframes, it's not going to work. I've got to right click and add it to this layer before I can add keyframes to it within that zone, which is going to matter a lot if I've got these other layers locked. Because if I have base animation and keep alive locked, then I can't set any new changes on that control. Anyways, you get the hang of it pretty quickly. Layers are a lot of fun. This will, get a little bit busy if you keep adding a ton of layers. So make sure you name them well and make them intentionally. Don't just throw stuff in layers because you can. Try to keep specific actions or specific changes relevant to whatever it is you're trying to do. And one of the best things you can do is just explore, just play with them, just try it, see what happens. And always adjust things like the weight and, try that out, see how that feels. If I select the Robo Turn in general, it'll easily bring me down here to where my Robo Turn is down here, and I can see all of my animation curves currently set inside of it, which in this case are just those three things. Crunch. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an insight into animation layers. This is only talking really about the additive layers. We haven't gotten to override layers. That's something I'm going to cover more over on my YouTube channel or in my independent courses. So if you like this stuff, if you want to go even deeper, we're going to have more videos here that we're providing for Unreal Engine, but also you can check out the stuff on my YouTube channel and in my classes. But thanks so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. My name is Sir, and I'll see you in the next video.